Hello all, this is a recording of a forum based on quiet students, are we doing them a disservice? So it's really worth kind of just reminding ourselves that our louder, more confident students tend to always be the ones demanding our attention. But being aware that intense focus is often assumed to be full engagement. So quiet students tend to go inwards when they're distracted, so they won't so obviously be distracted and not engaging in the learning. They will tend to daydream and be off focus in that regard. We do tend to, research suggests, equate silence with good behaviour. So if we've got really quiet students, we assume that they're really well behaved. And good behaviour we tend to link with academic success. So quiet students, we can quite often over predict how well they're doing or assume that their learning is strong, partly because of their behaviour based around being very quiet. But quietness doesn't mean understanding, and it's really worth being really aware of that. So we really do have to address zoning out. I can definitely picture students that I've got that are very quiet that do tend to zone out, that are really, really introverted. So when we see that glazed over look and that intense focus, where they clearly are daydreaming, it is just as important to gently address that as we would with louder students who are disrupting their own learning. So I tend to just call their name and say come back, and then they'll do a little, and I give them a little smile, and then they do the head shake. But we do have to address that zoning out as much as we would with those more confident students. Remind ourselves that student learning is not observable behaviour. So what I mean is that quiet students aren't necessarily understanding. So the only way we can prove learning is taking place in a lesson is to look at the outputs. So what can they tell us? What can they write on their whiteboard? What can they link to that assignment when we're live marking it? Learning is only output. It is not a behaviour that they're doing. Quietness does not mean they're learning. And one-to-one support is often much more effective for those really, really shy students, just as a note. Often quiet students can sometimes experience a double disadvantage. So on the one hand, we can think that they're doing really well when in actual fact they're struggling. But quietness can also be interpreted as a lack of interest, where we think they're not engaged, they're not listening, they're not working. So again, it's worth just bearing that in mind as a kind of different level of disadvantage. So again, we either underestimate their ability or we overestimate if they're really, really quiet. And the only way to really assess whether they're really understanding is they have to demonstrate that knowledge. We have to create those opportunities where they're demonstrating our knowledge to us, and then we can correct any misunderstandings that may have developed. So some of those effective strategies, on our CPD, we're always focused on key strategies to embed. Is cold calling is absolutely something I know we all do in our lessons, but it's worth just bearing in mind cold calling is as effective for quiet students as it is for any other. We know it increases participation. We just need it to be expected as a classroom strategy for all learners, every lesson, pretty constantly, to be honest. So we'd have those learning environments where input is essential from them all. I know it can be really difficult with really introverted students and students that are really quiet, but we have to assess their learning as much as any other students. And also we have to try and ensure that we build their confidence. So in every space that they're in, they're building up their confidence to speak and to engage, to really benefit them in terms of the skills coming through for employers. Turn and talk is also a really lovely one. So just an opportunity to turn to their partners in a more low pressure setting is a really lovely one. And again, it builds confidence and encourages speaking up. So I've been really trying to do more turn and talks this year. I do a lot of questioning kind of one-to-one with students across the whole room constantly, but I do actually find this peer-on-peer does feel significantly much more low pressure to those students. So even if I'm saying to them, right, ones turn to twos, just remind them what material deprivation is, I found the buy-in was actually really strong, so I was really pleased with that. So thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions, please let me know, or if you just fancy a lovely professional conversation about those quiet students in the staff room or corridor, I'll always be happy to help. Thank you so much.